This is We All Be News and Radio.
Ron Hurd. Get up out of bed. Let's go. Let's go. Ron Hurd. That's the word. Get out of bed. Give me a jingle. My number 051. Get out of bed. Let's go. Don't be afraid. This is Herb Smith calling you. Herb Smith. All right, I know you're famous and all that kind of stuff, but let's go. Get out of bed.
Hey, Ron, son, Mama Dee here. Happy Father's Day to you. You never know what little Ron Hurds or RTC2s are running around. And they just didn't tell you.
And welcome, Black family, to another wonderful edition of the Artivist Presents We All Be News and Radio. I'm your host for the Empowerment segment, Brother Ron, also known as R2C2H2 the Artivist. We got a great one in store for you all today, family. So please feel free to join us for this very powerful and impactful conversation. Calling number is area code 646-652-4593. That's area code 646-652-4593. And if you're scared to get on the air, we'll open up the chat room. So please feel free to share your thoughts, your comments, and even questions for our wonderful and accomplished guests. And we might read it on the air to our guests as well. So please feel free to join in that way. And let's get down to business. Today's topic, of course, is the real White House down, the Secret Service exposed with Brother Abraham Bolden. Now, Brother Abraham Bolden is a history maker in his own right. He was the first black Secret Service agent appointed to a presidential detail. He was actually selected by President John F. Kennedy himself to be on his presidential detail. So this guy has a lot of information about what's going on with the Secret Service, his history, his traditions, and also he's a true unsung American hero. Brother Bolden warned his superiors or supervisors that the president's life was in jeopardy because of the misconduct of his peers in the Secret Service. And we all know that November 22nd, 1963 happened, and Brother Bolden wanted to testify before the Warren Commission about what he knew about the Secret Service because he actually saved the president's life from being assassinated in Chicago during the Army-Navy game. So instead of him getting a chance to testify before the Warren Commission, he was framed by the powers that be and spent 5 years of his life doing hard time in federal prison. So without further ado, he's also the author of The Echo from Daily Plaza, which is also his autobiography, and gives a great insight into the sacrifices and the commitment he made to serve his president and also the country. Without further ado, Brother Abraham Bolden, welcome to We All Be once again.
Yes, thank you very much, brother. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's an honor to have you on. I mean, I can't do you enough justice. Your show actually is one of our most popular shows in history. I still get phone calls and texts and email from people being very moved and inspired by your testimony, and also people wanting to connect with you. So I want to thank you for sharing your testimony with us so we could know the truth about what actually happened back on November 22nd, 1963.
Yes, of course, in my book, The Echo from Daily Plaza, I bring out the fact that I went into the Secret Service in October 1961 after having about 8 years of police experience in the Pinkerton National Detective Agency and the Illinois State Police. And it was in that position of joining the Secret Service on October the 30th of 1960 that I became acquainted with President Kennedy. President Kennedy, as you know, in November of 1961 election to become president of the United States. And during his going around thanking everyone for their support, he was scheduled to come to Chicago on April the 28th of 1961. Now, I was the new agent then stationed here in Chicago, and they were making the assignments in the Secret Service office for the president's visit, and I noticed on the sheet where the assignments were, they had scratched out a Chicago policeman's name and put my name there at a post which was out of the way downstairs in McCormick Place on the first floor level, away from where the convention was being held. They put me in front of a washroom, guarding the washroom that was set aside only for President Kennedy if he should so desire to use it. Now, normally, as I said, that position was for a uniformed Chicago policeman, but they put me there out of the way and put the Chicago policeman upstairs where I should have been in the convention hall. Well, as fate would have it, when President Kennedy arrived at McCormick Place at about 8:30, the first thing that he wanted to do was use the washroom. And I heard the commotion upstairs, and I looked up at the top of the stairs, and lo and behold, here comes President Kennedy. The first thing he wanted to do was use the washroom, and there I stood right there at the doorway. So you can see it was just a matter of fate, and that I was standing there to meet the President of the United States, as well as many of the elected officials from Illinois. Now, the President stopped in front of me and asked me if I was a Chicago policeman or a Secret Service agent. I told him I was a Secret Service agent, Mr. President. And the President looked me in the eye, and I think he knew the answer before he asked me. He said, "Mr. Bolden, has there ever been a Negro assigned to the White House detail in Washington, D.C.? And I told him, "Not to my knowledge, Mr. President." And he smiled. We shook hands, and he says, "I'll be looking forward to seeing you in Washington, D.C." And he asked me, he said, "Would you like to be the first?" I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. President." He said, "I'll be looking forward to seeing you in Washington, D.C." And on July the 6th of June the 6th, 1961, I made that long walk up to the White House door and became the first African-American to be assigned to the White House detail in Washington, D.C. And I felt that I had accomplished quite a bit in that little time, in the short life that I had lived. I was about 26 years old at that particular time, and I thought it was very grateful that I had done something that my people could become proud of. But when I went on the detail, unfortunately, I found that what I expected to find was agents who were diligent about their duty, who were going about trying to do their best to protect the President of the United States. And I expected to find open-minded agents that surrounded the President. However, that was not the case, brother. I found out, as a matter of fact, the only people that called me the N-word were those who were within the agency of the Secret Service. So I had a pretty rough time there for the time that I was breaking the ice, so to speak, into the Secret Service. I also noticed another thing, that the Secret Service did not like President Kennedy. They talked about him behind his back, and they seemed to be more interested in who he was seeing and who he was talking to and where he was going than they were doing his job. I also found during that time, now we're talking about almost 50 years ago now, I also found out they were doing a lot of drinking, and they were, as a matter of fact, there were one or two of them I did not identify in the book who were actually smoking reefer when they were on duty. Now, I thought this was really a big breakdown in the security of the President of the United States. And my supervisor didn't seem at all concerned about it, because, as a matter of fact, my supervisor, who at that time was Harvey Henderson, when we were in Massachusetts, Hannahsport, Massachusetts, told me to my face after he saw me talking with Bobby Kennedy and the President, it seemed to upset him. He told me to my face that, he says, "Look, you a nigger. You gonna always be a nigger. You'll be nothing but a nigger, so act like one." Now, he was my supervisor in the Secret Service. Now, I noticed that another thing that really bears upon what happened just a few weeks ago when we had the fence jump at the White House.
Right.
Whenever that the president would say go out of town or something like that, or go to a speech or something, the minute that he left the White House, the agents would vacate the White House. And they would go off drinking and having a good time. They would be partying and everything, and they supposed to be on duty. Such happened to me when the president went to Miami, Florida. Now, when I was on the detail in 1961, the president went to Miami, Florida. Now, before that, the president went to Miami, Florida. Gerald Bain, who was one of the chiefs of the Secret Service under James Rowley, had a conversation with Mr. McCarthy, who was one of the hotel owners there where the Secret Service was going to live. And Mr. McCarthy, as I bring out in my book, Echo from Dealey Plaza, said, don't bring that Negro because we're not going to let him stay in a hotel with the rest of the agents. Now, the climate at that time, the racism was really thick. You know, we had the Freedom Bus rides going. There was a lot of shooting. There was killings. There were lynchings. And the whole United States of America seemed to be engrossed in this color thing, this racism, black against white. And they were very upset and doing devious things, the Ku Klux Klans, and many of your governors in the South, as a matter of fact, were openly voicing their opposition to integration. So now here I was in a situation where I'm witnessing these things that were going on around President Kennedy, and having become a victim of that same segregated policy when the president went to Miami, Florida. I was very sensitive to what was going on around me, and I noticed that when the president went to Miami, Florida, there were supposed to be 3 agents who were guarding the White House. I didn't think that was sufficient, because what happens if the president should have to turn around and come back? Now, there was a contingent of agents who were with him, but there should have been more agents protecting the White House, the inside of the White House, than there were. There were only 3 of us. 2 of them took off and went somewhere, and I didn't see them anymore, so I just stayed there by myself and read the manual. So this is the type of environment that the Secret Service created, and this is the environment that they protected with their code of silence so far as telling about what was actually happening within the Secret Service.
Wow, that's incredible. You said all the stuff you said, because, I mean, just looking at it now, 50-something years later, has anything really changed as far as the culture, you think?
No, it did not change. As a matter of fact, it's just like a seed. If you don't do something to correct the tree, you know, and that seed's going to keep growing until it blossoms out. It's going to fruition sometime. Now, what we're seeing right now, what we're witnessing with the laxity of the Secret Service and the fence jumper and people taking shots into the White House and things like that, what we actually witness is the fruition of a culture that has been existing for such a long time, for over 50 years. Now, with that code of silence that was being enforced within the Secret Service, or which was enforced upon me because they told me, because I was complaining so much about the lack of protection that President Kennedy was getting, they said that I was not a team player. So in order to stay in the Secret Service, you had to go along with their culture and what they had set up, or you would be, something would happen to you, what happened with me. That's why it was so difficult and will be so difficult to make any changes that will effectively assure that the President of the United States will be protected, because that code of silence says that you keep your mouth shut about certain things, and if you open your mouth, they're going to get you one way or another. They'll either fire you or they'll frame you. And that's what happened to me.
You definitely got framed. I think it's always interesting because the people that frame you were also involved in some of the miscarriages of justice as it relates to other human rights violations. Because I noticed in your book, the judge as well as the prosecutor who tried you in a kangaroo court were also the ones responsible for undermining the Fred Hampton murder trial, correct?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Ed Hanrahan was the United States Attorney General here in Chicago that handled my case, and he subsequently, within a few years after that, he led the assassination team that killed Fred Hampton and Mark Clark on the west side of Chicago. So that was definitely what I call hit squads in process. And they meant business. They meant to keep things concealed and keep things on a track in which that they wanted everything to go. And at that time, it could clearly be seen as a quest for white power and to stay in power and for certain organizations to rule America. And that's the way it seemed to me.
And that's incredible. I mean, because you actually did how many years in jail did you do?
I did 3 years and 3 months in a penitentiary. Now, that was even after, and the odd and peculiar thing about that was even after one of the key witnesses in my trial admitted under oath to the same judge that heard my 2 trials that he had in fact committed perjury that was solicited by the United States Attorney in order to convict me of a crime. And when we went before the Court of Appeals, this same attorney was called before the judge of the chief judge of the Court of Appeals and who inquired of him whether or not he in fact had built the case against me and solicited perjured testimony. At which time this attorney, Richard Seitz, who was one of the assistant attorneys, took the Fifth Amendment and refused to answer before the chief judge of the Court of Appeals. And under those circumstances, I thought surely that justice would prevail and the people and the judges and the judicial system would see through the case that they had called themselves building upon me. Now, one of the other chief witnesses was a guy named Frank Jones, who I had arrested twice for counterfeiting United States $5 bills. He and his wife I had arrested, and those were a couple of the witnesses against me. Now, what they did was dropped Frank Jones's case along with 16 other convicts that I had also arrested in his group. I arrested the whole gang of them. They dropped everyone's cases in order to have Frank Jones commit perjury against me. Then they dropped his case. So you can see this thing was a well-thought-out plan in order to disgrace me, to silence me, and to send a message to other Secret Service agents to keep their mouths shut or suffer the consequences.
Because you actually was going to testify before the Warren Commission, right?
Yes, absolutely. I was getting ready to testify before the Warren Commission. I had I did myself a disfavor in even bringing up the fact that someone should testify before the Warren Commission. And what I wanted to talk about was the very serious threats that Kennedy had. Kennedy had threats similar to what Obama is getting in today's time. We had a person who evaded the security when President Kennedy was in Miami, Florida, and now that was squashed. Then we had the same thing happen when the president came to Chicago here. There were a team that came to Chicago, 4-man team came in Chicago, and they rented a little hotel space, a little rooming house on the north side of Chicago. And one of the maids who was cleaning up, I think she was also a part owner, happened to see 4 rifles with sights attached to them laying on a bed. Now, I don't know if they were under the sheet or where they were under the mattress, but she said that they were on the bed. Secret Service blew that job, they blew the surveillance of these 2 Cubans, and I think she said that there were 2 Cubans and there were a couple of Europeans who were coming to visit those Cubans during the day. But now, the Secret Service destroyed those reports. Now, at that time, when I brought that up, complained about the fact and wanted to go to the Warren Commission and let them know that the Secret Service was destroying records of investigations and were not reporting what was actually occurring so far as the president's protection was concerned. Of course, people were calling me a lie. Back in 1964, they were saying he's only saying those things because that Secret Service arrested him. But now, 50 years later, we find out through the interview and interrogation by the Congress of the Secret Service chief, the Miss Pearson, that in fact the Secret Service were not reporting serious incidents to President Obama, which is the same thing that they were doing back in the Kennedy era. So nothing was learned about the sincerity of the Secret Service and about the laxity within the Secret Service until this thing exploded 50 years ago. And thank God that it did, because people were, still had some doubt about what I was saying, whether or not my charges of laxity, drinking and doing different things, going out with prostitutes and why they were supposed to be on assignment. They were wondering, indeed, is this guy telling the truth or is he a liar? Well, everyone can see now, because it's we have the technology that we didn't have back in 1963. We have all of the reporting elements that we didn't have in 1963. And fortunately, we have a Congress that called the chief of the Secret Service, Miss Pearson, before them to find out what really actually happened on the White House when this guy Gonzalez jumped the fence.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, go ahead, I'm sorry, Brother Bolden, go ahead.
We didn't have that type of inquiry back then. As a matter of fact, after the president was assassinated, it seemed as if what the object was to blame the entire assassination on this one man, Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, if that is in fact true, which I don't believe it is, if that is in fact true, there is no need to hold the documents pertaining to that assassination. If we know that this was the problem of just one assassin, one lone assassin who sat in a window of the school book depository and killed our president, then the American people need to see what actually is the underlying evidence that sustained this conclusion. And there is no need to hide from the American people their documents. These documents belong to the American people, and they should be open and disclosed to the American people so they can make fair judgment as to the operation of our governmental system.
Well, actually, this, in hindsight, would there have been anything different you would have done as it relates to, the Secret Service and the handling of the situation with Kennedy?
Yes, that would have been, because, brother, on November the 26th, I believe it was. Now, I found this out after I had done my time, after I had come home and began to do some research into the situation. I found that the Attorney General Katzenbach, who was acting in place of the Attorney General Kennedy after his brother was assassinated, Robert Kennedy. Now, I found out that the acting Attorney General had written a memo, and this memo had gone to one of President Johnson's chief aides. And stated in this memo was that Oswald had to be found as the lone assassin of President Kennedy. And that so that means that the appointment of that Warren Commission was just forced upon the American people. It was a facade. It was a sham on American people to direct their attention in the direction that they wanted it to go.
So, how do you think the Secret Service was a part of this sham? At any level, was the Secret Service complicit?
I think, well, let me put it like this. After the president was assassinated, now I know from experience that what the agents are supposed to do when they're standing there, the agent on the right running board, the left running board, and different things like that, what they're supposed to do in case of an emergency. Now, in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, I overheard a conversation where agents were discussing the fact that they didn't like President Kennedy. He was a nigger lover and things such as that. And that if an assassin should make an attempt to assassinate him, that they would not react. And he was suggesting that other agents of that shift not react also. Now, I have a suspicion that not only was that developed on the shift that I was on, that it may have been Secret Service wide. Now, let me tell you why I believe that. Because after the president was assassinated, now there came a lie, a vicious lie, that the president had instructed the Secret Service not to be on the running board where they were supposed to be in his protection when he went to Dallas, Texas. Now, that was the first time that anyone had heard of that. I questioned that when it was first brought up at a meeting. And I understood from my Secret Service agent in charge of the Chicago office that this is what was being told. Now, I know that to have not been a fact, because any such conclusion by the president would have to have come through the Secret Service chief of the detail. Now, having all of this information, I don't believe that I would have waited to go before the Warren Commission. I would not have waited until the president was assassinated. I would have taken advantage of the opportunity when I was coming from Hyannisport, Massachusetts, in a helicopter with President Kennedy and the chief of the Secret Service, James Riley, sitting next to me. He was sitting right next to me, and I was on a helicopter sitting about 3 or 4 feet from the president. I thought at that time about broaching the subject of the type of protection that the president was getting. But I thought better of it because being a new agent, I think that by the time the helicopter landed, the first thing they would have did was fire me. And I had a wife and several children here and had just bought a home and things like that. So I didn't bring the subject up until we landed in Washington, D.C., and I went straight into the office of the chief of the Secret Service, U.E. Bauman, at that time, and explained to him the many fallacies that I had seen in the operation of the Secret Service and the protection around President Kennedy. I would have probably, if I had to do over again, I would probably go to some newspaper reporter or send someone to some newspaper reporter and try to have a conversation with him and have an investigation launch rather than put myself on the spot like I did and going to Washington, D.C. and trying to contact one of the general counsels of the Warren Commission. And when I did that, I gave myself away because they suspected that that's what I was going to do because of my constant complaints against the activities of the Secret Service. And so right away on May the 18th of 1964, they hustled me right back to Chicago and held me for all day, as a matter of fact, from about 1 o'clock in the afternoon into 12 o'clock at night. I guess they were trying to figure out what they were going to do with me, and they ended up at 12 o'clock midnight on the 19th. They charged me with a crime. Of course, that was ridiculous, and they said that they were going to charge me with soliciting a bribe, and then they locked me up.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking about what you just said, because I was thinking about how this stuff came out by the Secret Service now was through the Washington Post. They kept on posting different stories after story, slow leaking it versus everything all at once. Now, let me ask you this. You ever consider yourself a part of the Secret Service? It's like to me you was an outsider.
Well, I was an outsider so far as the White House detail was concerned, because they had a good old boys club there that didn't include me, and several of them just hated to work with me. You know, they would leave me standing in the White House on a certain post where a Secret Service agent would be stationed. And they would leave me there instead of pushing me or relieving me every half an hour like they normally would do an agent. You get pushed around so that you can take a break. I would stand at some post for an hour and a half at a time. And I would see other agents walking around relieving, and I knew what was going on. They just made it almost impossible for me to be an agent so far as the White House detail was concerned. Now, here in Chicago, I ran into some of the same racism. I came to work one morning, and there was a noose hanging over my desk, a hangman's noose. Someone had attached it to the light bulb, which was over my desk, the fluorescent light. And I guess they called themselves joking, but that's no way to joke, because people were my people were actually being lynched at that time by that same process down in the southern states of the United States. And when I brought that to the attention of my special agent in charge, he said, well, you're just thin-skinned. You're too thin-skinned. The guys are just playing around. But that's no way to play when you're in the midst of trying to find how to approach you might say, a cancer that was before the American people at that particular time.
Let me ask you this, then. You feel like your life was ever in danger?
Yes, I felt that. Yes, I did. I felt that it was in danger, especially when I was locked up, when I was in Terre Haute, Indiana, and someone torched my house. Now the fireman who investigated it, I was at Terre Haute, Indiana, that particular day, and it was in October of 1966, and I had been locked up since June 26th of 1966. Now, what happened is that someone set fire to the garage, someone fired a shot into the house. In other words, what they were doing, they were harassing my family. Now, what that does to an inmate, when you're an inmate and things are going on such as that, your house being burned, shots being fired into your house, it sort of plays on your mind. Of course, my wife did her best to keep a lot of these things out of my attention until I was released from the penitentiary.
Has anyone ever apologized to you from the Secret Service? Any of your colleagues?
No. Wow. As a matter of fact, brother, it's very disheartening. It is very disheartening of the amount of letters that I wrote to congressmen, to the Black Caucus. I wrote letters to many of our leaders, and they didn't take any action. And I know why they didn't take any action, because they were of the attitude that I was lying. They didn't believe what I was saying about the conduct of the Secret Service, about what they were doing, how that they protected President or misprotected President Kennedy. They didn't believe in my truthfulness, and I think that that's what stopped them from taking any action. Now, there is no excuse. Everybody can see that the Secret Service, in fact, concealed information that the president should have known concerning his safety. Everyone can see now that the Secret Service was a place where inexperienced people who took their job lightly, drinking, prostitute, hustling. As I said back in 1961, they're doing the same thing today. So now there is no excuse for me to suffer like my wife and I suffered. My wife passed away in 2005 on December the 27th. But we suffered. We suffered together. My children suffered because of this. And now here I am, a man who is 79 years of age. I'll be 80 my next birthday. I've had health problems that stem from all of the stress that I've had to go over and endure these last 50 years because of an organization that felt it more to destroy me than let the truth come forth.
So you actually help people probably in the Secret Service now that know about you. They use it as a cautionary tale for young recruits. I bet they do. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes,
Okay.
I've heard about it. As a matter of fact, a couple of Secret Service agents contacted me and tried to have me come to the James Rowley Secret Service School and give a talk concerning how the Secret Service was when I was a young Secret Service agent. Of course, that was vetoed. That never came to any fruition at all. And I told him when we discussed it, there's slim and none chances of your supervisor letting me come and do that. So it did. It fell through. But I tell you, my brother, it is just, I have suffered these 50 years. My wife died an early death because of this, and so did my mother. And it's just a horrible thing to send a man to the penitentiary when you know that he hasn't done any crime. Now, you know the sad thing about it, too, I would like to bring out, during the 1960s and 70s here in Chicago, many of our people believe, they say, well, if the police arrested him, he must have done something. He was guilty of something. That's the way we thought about the FBI and until we found about COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO was a program whereby the FBI was set out to disrupt and to bring to confusion any black organization that seemed to speak out on the racial issues. Now, and also, when this was going on, we had many people who were arrested for various crimes. Now, within the past 15 or 20 years, many of these people who were serving time on death row and other places have been found to have been innocent of the crimes under which they were charged. And since they have this DNA and the handwriting experts and all this type of modern-day scientific analysis and forensics, they're finding out that what many of our young men were saying about illegally incarcerated and framed was very true. Now, I have written the Secret Service, and I wrote the chief of the Secret Service, not this particular chief, but Chief Sullivan, asking that the documents in my file be re-examined by new forensics technology, because I'm sure that some of the documents that they said that I authored or that I typed, they were false. And not only were they false, I believe that if the new forensic were performed on those documents, that it would prove that Frank Jones and the United States Secret Service, in fact, authored a conspiracy to send me to the penitentiary and to silence me about what I knew about, especially the Chicago investigation.
And I'm listening to you saying, you said that people actually trusted the FBI, like people of color, black folks actually trusted the authority. Now we know better, but I'm thinking right now of Brother Bolden. I'm in the St. Louis area right now, and I cover some of the Mike Brown stuff. You still got black folks that, no matter what happens to us, regardless if we're the victim, we will always be guilty of something. We'll never be innocent of anything. And I want to ask you, do you feel that black folks can get true justice in this system as it is constructed now?
Well, I can tell you this, that it would have to be a proven issue. Now, here's the thing about getting true justice. In order to receive justice, you must be just yourself, because justice comes to a person from inside out, not from outside in. If you're unjust within your own self, then you cannot expect to receive justice from anybody else. So that means what? That means that we have to understand and become a changed people within our own hearts. We have to begin to love instead of hate. That means that we have to know our history, and we have to study and become aware of the condition that we're in, and then seek positive efforts to solve it.
I definitely agree with that. I co-sign that as well. But my thing is this, like, I know that even, like, I look at the Ferguson situation, a lot of young people are very brave. It reminds me of a story I read about the 30th anniversary of the Emmett Till murder. The Clarion Ledger, the newspaper down in Mississippi, they went into the Mississippi Delta to interview Roy Bryant, the husband of the woman that Emmett Till, Leslie Wolf Whistle. He came back to the Delta to open up a grocery store. And he said something to the report that stuck with me to this day after I read it, some years later. He said black folks were more afraid back in the 50s than they are now. That was 85. But the only difference is they don't know who I am. Lack of knowing who he is kept him alive and kept him making money off of black people.
Yeah.
So my thing is, like, a lot of black folks, young black people, are not afraid. They're courageous. They're brazen. But at the same time, they have no knowledge of self. They have no understanding of history or what came before.
And that's the breakdown. That's where the breakdown is, because unless you know your history, you're going to continue to repeat it. Now, one mistake that we're making, and we would have to do a lot of planning in order to solve this situation, is that we know the history of slavery. We know how our grandparents, and our great-great-grandparents, how we were brought over on the ship, but that's not the beginning of the story. The thing about it is that we have to remember that we are human people. We have to understand that if you have suffered under the hands of a certain group of people, it would be like if the Jews would have the Nazis to teach them, or to build schools for them and teach them the Nazi, fundamentals of thinking. Now that's what we're doing. We're asking the enslaver to free us through his education. So how can that be? If you learn what the enslaver knows, then you're going to react as the enslaver, and that's a problem today.
That's so true. It's like what Malcolm said, a person's a fool that let the enemy be the primary educator of their children. You are so correct, Brother Bolden. And my thing is this, I think it's kind of strange that here you are, a true American hero, as they say, but yet you still can't get no love or justice. It's still just us. But yet, people like Steve Harvey can help Paula Dean on his show. But I don't think Mike Vick will ever be invited to be the spokesperson for PETA. So what is it about unforgivable blackness in this system? Why can't we be forgiven for our quote-unquote sins or be redeemed?
Yes, I can't understand it either. I remember back in 2009, shortly after I was talking on your show, as a matter of fact, I had talked with one of the producers of Oprah Winfrey's show, and she was glad to have me on, but I found out later that Oprah defeated it. She would not let me be on her show. Now, I was looking at the fact that some guy up in New York somewhere wrote a book concerning his love affair that he had when he was in a concentration camp. When he fell in love with a woman and they kissed through the wire fence, and all of it was bull. Nothing in that story was true. But he appeared on Oprah right away. And I have yet to see some of our rich leaders that were backing or having anything to do with our quest for justice, so far as financing it, so far as helping us. See, the thing about it, we have, as a people, we have about, $3 to $6 billion a year. We have coming into our neighborhoods in excess of the budget of many African countries, many African states. We have that much money coming in. We have billions of dollars coming in. But what do we have to show for it? That means that our attitudes and our thinking has been misdirected, and we are not using our finance and our education to our advantage. We're the only people that don't do that. You even have Mexicans who come to the United States who can't read or write. But after they're here, within 5 years, they have stores, they buy homes, they do different things, and, people laugh at them because they're out there picking berries and things like that. But I tell you one thing, when they go back to the neighborhood, they buy the building where they were picking berries, and they send money back to Mexico. So we're a people who, because of self-hate, that is what's bringing on our problem.
Yeah, I was thinking what you just said because I was noting to a colleague recently that I look at a lot of organized crime history. I'm an organized crime buff. But I look at somebody like Carlo Gambino, who came over to this country illegally, or somebody like Carlos Marcello. They both came over to this country illegally, never claimed citizenship status, but yet they died. They were multimillionaires. I mean, they had businesses generating hundreds of millions of dollars every year, but they never had citizenship status. But they controlled the politics because they knew they had to buy their way into the system. And I think black folks, even though, next year we're coming up on the Voting Rights Act, 1965 50th anniversary, since that time we had over 10,500 elected black officials, but we still have no power in D.C. It's hard for me to blame the president. We don't have a real black lobby that lobbies for a black agenda. Now, we have black politics, but we have no black lobby or no black agenda.
No, we don't. And most of our agendas are based upon what we have learned within institutions that we didn't author, and we don't have anything to do with the curriculum of those institutions. Now, I'm not against any nation of people. I'm not against any race of people. I think that we're all human beings, but the problem is that we have to recognize the situation that we're in. We have to go by what history says and understand how to manipulate this situation to our best interest. That's what our leaders should be all about. See, being reactionary won't get us anywhere. We need to plan. We need to have educational system. We need to begin to have our own schooling system. We need to become fair and just people ourselves. The black-on-black crime, they have to have a reason to stop this black-on-black crime. And that reason is that it is destroying our neighborhoods, it's destroying our children, it's destroying America, as a matter of fact. So we have to do what we can do. Now, the old-time leaders are outdated. They're outdated. You can forget about people like A.L.L Sharpton and picketing and demonstrate. We need constructive, intellectual, long-term, spiritual guidance. See, that's what we need, see. And in order to do that, we have to teach our youth, train them. And not only train them, we have to be what we want them to be. See, it doesn't do any good to tell a youth that he should not be fighting among himself if the adults are fighting among themselves. It doesn't do any good to tell a youth that rape is wrong when the same youth goes home and hears some guy from the outside struggling with his mother and doing things like that. So we have to become what we want others to be, and that's the only way that we can change the environment, is to be what we want others to be. And ask ourselves sincerely, if everybody was just like me, what kind of world would this world be? You see, now when you ask yourself that, that's a profound question, isn't it?
It is.
Can you imagine everybody being just like you and think just like you? What kind of world would we have?
Well, that's some food for thought. Say that again. Say that phrase again, Brother Bolden. Can you say that again?
What kind of world would this world be if everybody thought just like me?
That's powerful. And I want to get back to the White House Secret Service thing. I think this thing is very disturbing. Because my understanding, you can correct me. I know you know more about the Secret Service than I do. I believe the Secret Service was started by Abraham Lincoln. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Allen J. Pinkerton was one of the first one of the first guys who came about for the protection of the President of the United States. Now, it wasn't called a Secret Service then. It was just the Pinkerton National Detective Agency, which I became involved in and became a member in 1956, as a matter of fact. So that's where it started. Now, the Secret Service was actually instituted somewhere around in the 1930s, I believe, when it was officially given the duty to protect the President of the United States as a body under the Treasury Department.
So I'm saying that even with Abraham Lincoln, he was the first president to die with that type of arrangement before they officially became the Secret Service. That's correct, right? Yes,
that's right. That's
so
right.
We had several presidents get killed since that time, including Kennedy. And my concern is this, is like, what would you tell President Obama if you had a chance to talk to him one-on-one? What advice would you give him about his security detail?
Well, the first thing I would tell him is to be on guard himself. Don't let his guard down, because not to be too trusting of anyone. Now the man's the President of the United States. Let's face it. He is the chief executive of the United States. We can't put him in a steel container or a Pope mobile as bomb-proof and all of this kind of thing. We have to protect the President, and he has to be advised if there are any circumstances in which he might be in danger. Say, for instance, there's a way that the President could have been told concerning the shoot-up of the White House. You remember these people shot about 7 shots into the White House and hit the White House about 7 times. Now, there's a way to tell the President that, even though they never told the President about that incident. I think the First Lady found it out secondhand, as a matter of fact. But he has to stop being so trusting. He has to appoint good, experienced people. Now, I could have told you that his appointment of a Julia Pearson would have set off all types of attitudes within the Secret Service. The first place is they're testosterone-minded. They already feel like, that when it rains, it doesn't fall on their shoulder. So now you put a woman in charge of these type of ego-tripping men, and there are bigger egos within the Secret Service. That's the reason they get in so much trouble. So that's one of the problems. It would be very difficult to protect the President 100%. You see, without actually separating him from the American people. And we really don't want to do that. Training is the answer. The use of the technology that we already have is one of the answers. I would have the President, if I were to advise him, to appoint someone to go in, not of the Secret Service, but an outsider, who to go in and examine the procedures, to look in the manual, and to see are there weaknesses, are there mental weaknesses, are there manpower weakness, just where the weaknesses are, and to report back to him directly. Don't take the Secret Service, their investigation. To appoint an independent agency to find out just what the problems are within the Secret Service. Now, whether or not that will work or not, I don't know, because nobody wants to spend 6 years in a penitentiary. Now,
Right.
yeah. So an outside person coming in, I'm sure that blue line that they talk about in the police work would come into effect, and there would be some agents that would have terrible lapses of memory when it came to their time to tell the investigator what happened. I think that he would have a better chance, though, than relying on the administrative arm of the Secret Service to give him the true facts about his protection.
Would it be best for this outsider to become like a undercover agent or a covert operation? Would that be a better way of approaching it?
No, it would be open. It would be open. Okay. Every now and then, I would say that you could put someone in. But in this day and time, people, doesn't seem like the government is looking favorably on people who want to reveal certain things that are happening within the government. It just seems you take the Snowden incident, and it seems like if someone comes out with the truth about what's going on with the government, he becomes an enemy of that government. And it seems like it's more so today, for some reason, under President Obama than it has been in the past.
Oh, well, it is true. So you feel like that the Secret Service look at you as being a snitch or a rat?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Sure. That's right. But see, I didn't mind if they looked at me like that. I tell you why. Because, see, I felt myself as not working for the Secret Service when I was an agent. When I went to Washington, D.C., I knew that the Secret Service gained its authority from the Congress of the United States of America. Now, I was working for the American people. I was not working for President Kennedy. I was not working for the chief of the Secret Service. But I saw myself as an agent of the American people to see that I could do everything in my power, even the giving away of my own life, in order that orderly transformation of government could take place. That means that we must preserve the life of the current president so that our constitutional guarantees can be placed in effect through legal elections and not assassination. See, when President Kennedy was killed in Dallas on November the 22nd, that placed us in the same group with some of the other lesser countries that we feel like we're superior to. We look at those countries as being barbaric when the same thing is happening right on the soil in the United States of America. Now, you can't have it both ways. You cannot dislike the man, say, for instance, which should not be an issue. Those people who dislike Obama, they have to understand that they have the wrong focus. The focus should be on that they are agents of the United States of America placed there to perform a constitutional duty to ensure things that are ingrained within our freedom. And when they look at it like that, it would make any difference as to who the president is, what color he is, what religion he is, or anything like that. And that's where this country is failing, because there are so many divisive things that people are focusing on instead of focusing on the fact that we are all one human race. We want the same thing. We want peace. We want happiness. We want to be able to be safe when we walk down the street. We want to have guaranteed rights. We want to have punishment for crimes. You see, we want all of these things to become a natural within our own society. Now, we cannot spread those ideal precepts to another society until we first become what we say that we are.
Well, we got a long way to go before we could do that there. We've got a very long way to go. In terms of, I'm looking at the track record that we have. And also, I want to ask you this as well. I'm really concerned about the Marion Carey, the sister who was killed over a year ago on the wedding anniversary of the Obamas, back on October 3rd, 2013. I've been doing some research, some little digging, and come to find out that they were actually running a military exercise called Capitol Shield 2014 for several days that ended on October the 3rd of last year. What do you think about that? Is there something to the Marion Carey? Because like you said, Gonzalez was able to jump across the fence, run right into the White House, all the way to the East Room with a weapon on his person. And yet you got this black woman who had no weapon, get shot 5 times in the back with a child in the car. And I read some reports saying that she was actually getting out the car, and they shot her in cold blood. What's your take on that?
To me, those were grounds for prosecution. I've always thought that those agents, whoever fired and killed that lady, should have been prosecuted. In the first place, she made a mistake. She made a wrong turn, which led her into a restricted zone, and was trying to make a U-turn in order to leave the restricted zone. I don't think that anyone who is outside of the gates surrounding the White House should be shot unless there's a clear and present danger that they're about to do something that can extend their reach into the White House grounds. Now, say, for instance, if she had a rifle in her possession, if she had explosives in her possession, I would say, yeah, they were justified. But as long as she was not a threat to the White House or its surroundings, and she did absolutely nothing to indicate that she was a threat either to the president or even to the public at large, yet their pistols were emptied on her. Now, I'll go so far as to say this, brother. We haven't heard the last of the Gonzalez incident.
Okay.
It is my opinion, and looking at the film as to how he was running across the lawn, and that Gonzalez had in his possession more than a 3-inch blade pocket knife. Now, I'm looking at the way that he's running. Now, what the major media said is that he had a little limp because he got hurt in the Marines or something like that. But I was looking at that very closely. You know, I was a policeman for a long time, and he was favoring that right leg as if someone had a long object that was down in his pants leg. He was running in that style, such as if a person had some gun or rifle or whatever down within his pants. I can't passion the fact that the United States Secret Service would let a man run all the way into the White House without having had that man either shot or brought down some type of way before he even reached within 15 or 20 feet of the White House door. As a matter of fact, he should have been stopped at the gate, at the fence. Why don't we have now? We have fences around schools now. Did you know that? We have barbed wire fences around some schools. We have electronic fences around some schools, and you have security in some parks, public parks around here now that is much more sufficient than the Secret Service acted when this guy jumped the fence. That fence should be electronic. It should have some type of warning device on it to let you know that someone is trying to climb over it or has bumped against it. It doesn't make any difference. It should be very sensitive to touch or to pull. And I can't understand it's just beyond my understanding why that hasn't occurred.
And also, I think the questions, though, people they overlooked in something too. I thought was very disturbing when I heard it. And you can't believe everything you see or read. Of course, everything is basically propaganda. But they said the person who actually stopped him was coming off duty. He was leaving the White House. So it made me think, how did he know the schedule? I mean, to me, was there like somebody that told him the schedule, like they're going to be changing Secret Service guys at this hour, at this particular time and shift? How did he know the timing in a way where he was able to get it's like a running back running through an offensive line, like in football. You got this hole, but it closes up, but you got to get that hole, you got to hit it as soon as possible or it'll close up on you. How did he know to attack, quote unquote, the White House at that moment?
Well, I think that may have been coincidental because the agents do, and I understand that he was being relieved of his shift of protecting the First Lady upstairs. So, and he was getting off from work. Now, that could be very true. But the fact of the matter is, too, that I understand. I've been to the White House. I don't know if you've been there or not, but in the location that they finally tackled him, he was just a few steps from an elevator that led up to the residence where the president actually lived. He was only about, I would say, 30 feet from it. So he must have known where he was going or where he wanted to go. He was just not running wildly in the White House. So he had some idea what he was trying to do.
Is it possible he could have been like an MK Ultra type of dude under mind control by somebody?
It's every possibility. Because I tell you why I say that, brother. Because I have never seen, and I've lived a long time, I have never seen a president of these United States disrespected, taunted, talked about, openly talked about. As a matter of fact, one Jewish newspaper said that he should be assassinated.
Yes, down in Atlanta, right. And they had the contract on the elevator with the gun.
So, that they should put a contract on it. Now, that's very, very serious because you know what? We had a case in Chicago, a Echeverria case here in Chicago before the assassination of the president. Echeverria told one of the Secret Service informants that President Kennedy was about to be killed and that they had the financing from the Jews to get the job done. That's exactly what he said, and that's in certain reports that the Secret Service refusing to release. But I know that that's in the report. It says because the Jews are going to finance it, and if we kill President Kennedy, we have a better chance of going back into Cuba.
Wow, so you say it was some Jewish people behind
the assassination of Kennedy? They were putting up the money to assassinate President Kennedy. That's what Echeverria said.
Now, that's interesting you say that. Like, who is this Echeverria? Who is this person?
Echeverria was a man here in Chicago who was tied up with what was known as the DRE, which was a Cuban organization that wanted to go back and take Cuba from Castro. He was one of those, a member in that organization. Now, as you know, President Kennedy, in that Bay of Pigs situation, he removed the airplane cover from the operation that Eisenhower had already okayed.
Right.
President Kennedy backed off of that during the Bay of Pigs. From that time on, the Cubans down in Miami didn't like the president very much, and they wanted something to happen to him so that they could get authorized to go back into Cuba and take it over and make it again the gambling center of the world.
And people forget that Havana was a mob stronghold. You got Meyer Lansky, a Jewish gangster.
Yeah.
He had casinos and hotels down in Havana. So I always think about what you're saying because people don't understand this. You know, we talk about, now people talking about Zionism in this period right now, you know, what's going on in the Middle East and whatnot. But people don't understand that one of the biggest Jewish financial dynasties, but the Rothschilds, they financed the British government to defeat Napoleon.
Yes.
The Rothschilds did that. You know, a lot of big-time people finance wars and things like that to make a profit. So what you're saying is very interesting and should be talked about because I know now the popular theory or belief is that Lyndon B. Johnson masterminded the hit on President Kennedy, but people never talk about the Zionist part of the whole thing.
No, they don't. And this was very specific what Echeverria claimed. And as I say, I saw these reports myself. Now, these are one of the reports that never appeared before the Warren Commission. These are the type of reports that the Warren Commission never considered. Whether they didn't want to consider them or the fact that the Secret Service destroyed many of those reports, that I don't know. But I think that the destruction of the reports and the concealing of the reports that were generated here in Chicago in reference to the possibility of assassinating President Kennedy here in Chicago. I think those reports were destroyed. That's the reason that the investigators who later on investigated it on behalf of the Congress in about 1979 could not find those reports.
Now, as people need to know this stuff, this is like the stuff they telling you. They always, to me, it's like Shakespearean. Who benefits from the death of the king? Who benefits from the removal of the king? Who have benefited from that? And like you said, there's a paper trail. No matter how much they try to destroy, you can actually do some forensic work in terms of researching the history to find out what really happened if you want to. But I'll tell you this, all the president got to do, if we want to know the truth about what happened to JFK, the president should give you an official pardon and let people know that you are an American hero, because once they pardon you, then we know that the JFK hit was an inside job.
Yes, well, once they pardon me, I think that would open up a lot of other things, and some of the other agents would come forth. And if we have the transparency that President Obama promised when he was running, I haven't seen that transparency yet. I was happy to see the president win the election, because I thought that one of the things that he would do would be open up the files that have been concealed from the American people for the past 50 years. He hasn't done that. Neither have I seen him show any interest in getting to the bottom of the truth. As a matter of fact, it's disappointing to me in several ways how WikiLeaks and Snowden and a few other whistleblowers have been treated under this administration. So it doesn't make me hopeful at all that I will receive anything from this administration. I'm sorry to say.
You know, only President Obama, ain't no other place he could have won the country to have risen as fast as he did, only in Chicago. You know, Chicago is a gangster city. You already know that.
Oh, yes.
You know, city. Like even FDR, people say, well, Giuseppe Zingara was trying to kill FDR down in Miami. I believe he was trying to kill the mayor of Chicago, Anton Cermak, because he was trying to take over the outfit. I mean, Anton Cermak tried to get Frank Nitti killed at his house. He had police detectives come to Frank Nitti's house and shoot him, and he survived. And they killed Anton Cermak. But I believe that they were trying to kill him instead of Roosevelt, because people don't know that Roosevelt was in the mob's pocket. I believe his Secretary of Labor, Sidney Hillman, had connections to the New York mob. As a matter of fact, I think Louis Lepke Buckhalter, the only mob boss ever electrocuted in the chair, he was a Jewish gangster who ran Murder Incorporated. He had information on the Roosevelt administration that Thomas Dewey passed up on, who ended up running for president twice. And they electrocuted him. But I'm saying, like, all this stuff is corrupted. I mean, like, you know, you're a good guy, try to do the right thing, try to, you know, do the right thing. You got a moral compass. But in this system, it's not about right or wrong. It's not about morality. It's about power. Yes,
that's right. But we have to keep it focused on right or wrong. Because once that we try to take it by power, I don't think that's going to be very viable. We cannot take it by power or by violence. We will have to think. We have to think our way through this. And there are ways that that this system or any corrupt system can be defeated. Let me say this before we go. In 1963, in November, when the president was coming to Chicago for the football game, they usually have an annual football game here between the two forces. I believe this one was between the Air Force and Navy. I'm not sure. But he was supposed to come to Chicago. And that's when these four men arrived in Chicago with the intention of killing the president. Now, we began to investigate that and went up north on North Avenue here in Chicago. And one of our agents observed two of the suspects loading some equipment in the back of a truck, in the back of a car in an alley. Now, I think that these men who were loading this equipment and were the two of the suspects that we were trying to follow because they had come here to assassinate the president. Now, I believe that these people were deserting Chicago because if Mayor Daley had found out that anybody was going to hurt the president here in Chicago, listen, that would have been body bags floating down Lake Michigan right now today.
Right.
See, you're not going to, and his chief of program, whose name was Riley at that time. Riley was his chief of operations so far as programs were concerned. So he was at the meeting when the telephone call came in concerning these men who were here allegedly to assassinate the president. Of course, as I said, if they had embarrassed Chicago like that, listen, you could not have bought a car without a body in it nowhere here in Chicago. Because
they called Gangster Daily for a
cleaned it out.
They called Gangster Daily for a reason. I mean, he was nothing but a gang leader. A machine. But let me ask you this, like, what about Mark Lane? I mean, how does he play a role in this story? I mean, it's like Mark Lane has been everywhere. He was like one of the first people to come out about the JFK murder conspiracy, but also he's been prevalent in the Jonestown and things of that nature, and the RFK and everything. What does he play? What type of role he plays in this?
Mark Lane is a master researcher. As a matter of fact, he was my attorney for a long time. He helped me quite a bit while I was gone away. And he's a very sincere researcher. There are other researchers who came later after Mark Lane, but Mark Lane was one of the first persons who came to interview me while it was shortly after the trial, and we talked, and he told me at that time that he was doing a book, and we sat in the living room. We talked for about a half an hour, and he mentioned me in his book, the first book that he wrote. I think it's on page 325, and since that time he has written several other books. I think his investigative ability is flawless. He has people who have first-hand knowledge. He has subpoenaed many of the documents and things which he authenticated. So he's a very, very, very astute attorney, a good person, and he's well-liked in the Kennedy community.
I want to get back to, like, I know you're talking about the guy in Chicago saying that the Jews might have been involved in financing the political or the assassination of President Kennedy. And I'm just curious about Atlanta. People don't understand Atlanta is a stronghold for Jewish people too. I mean, when you think about Jewish people, you don't think about New York and stuff like that. There's a lot of influential Jewish people down in the South, in particular in Atlanta, and places like Alabama. But you know, with a newspaper editor, he was in Atlanta. They called for the assassination of President Obama. And the guy was on the elevator with him. That happened in Atlanta, correct? The guy with the gun? Yeah, so I'm just saying.
No, he was in Chicago, the guy with the gun.
That was in Chicago.
That was in Chicago, the guy with the guns.
I'm just saying, to me, it's like to me, Dave, do you feel like there's some Secret Service people on his detail that really hate his gut? They hate the President Obama gut?
Yes, I think so. They couldn't help. They can't help but be with all of the propaganda that's on the radio and TV, the major media, about him, and about the fact that he is one of the most disrespected presidents, I think, in the history of the presidency. And we all know the reason. It's a power thing. It's a race thing, and I'll be glad when America realizes that racism is a detriment to even America itself. And we have to learn to get along with one another if we're going to be with one another in the same territory.
That's so true. And before I let you go, Brother Bolden, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I got some people on the line that want to talk to you. You mind taking calls?
No, I don't mind at all.
Okay, cool. So we're going to open the lines. Area code 443 on the air. Welcome to We All Be.
Hi, greetings. It's wonderful to hear you again on this appropriate time for the interview.
This is Sabrina, right? This is Sabrina?
Yes, great.
All right, good. It's good to hear your voice. I'm good. Right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, I've been following what Wim Dank Barr had put out years ago, and that's because his interviews that he had, and some people said it was wrong of how he got the information, but from James E. Files, who was one kind of a young youth that was involved in the assassination plan. And quite interesting is that, like you said, the disappointment that Obama didn't do anything with this, because in Florida, and I just saw maybe about a couple of months ago a picture that shows Luis Posada Carriles, who's undocumented, who had a role in it. It's suspected that he was one of those that made sure he was firing one of the shots to hit Kennedy. But he was actually on the site, sitting on the sidewalk with Orlando Bush. And apparently what was supposed to happen, that the officials and all those involved seemed to think it was just too far a stretch and wanted to cancel it off. But the ex-Cubans were the ones that insisted that it go on because of their hatred of Kennedy when he pulled out of the Bay of Pigs. And coincidentally, with John Kennedy Jr., one of the last things that he did was an interview with Castro. And Castro apologized to him because he said that, they were supposed to have a meeting, him and Kennedy, but they didn't have that meeting. And he felt that if that meeting had taken place, perhaps that would have thwarted the assassination attempt. But now it's very important that you brought up about with the Jewish, or as I term it, with that extreme designist role in it, because when you look what it is now, interesting with the platform that had with the Democrats is they're adopting and allowing them to put a banner on the convention, and so that way we could see that. But interesting enough, okay, walking down, I remember when I went down to the Mexican embassy and going by the White House a number of times, you notice that there are 2 or 3 people at each entrance of, the gate getting in there, and there's always it's either 2 standing, there's like a desk or a white box that you present your credentials and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so what happened there shouldn't have happened. And then plus that they said that this Gonzalez guy was known because this was not his only attempt with trying to do this. So I think that this was done intentionally to embarrass, perhaps to get that Secret Service woman to resign, or even more in that. So I don't think that this was an accidental whoops. We don't know what's going on here, even if possibly with the president or whatever, because I think they wanted to make some changes with the Secret Service, and this is what they were trying to get on this, and with all these so-called breaches that took place.
Yes, there have been some terrible breaches, I understand, in one city. As a matter of fact, a person was on the elevator with him, unidentified by the Secret Service, and this person had a weapon standing on the elevator with the president.
That is impossibly not to happen because, as you know, modern day, they go and do the sweeps of everything. And so that person should not have been allowed to be on there. Somebody had to clear him and said, okay, he could be on here. Normally
That's
what
right.
it is, everybody's evacuated out of the area. I've seen that with Constitution Avenue. No matter who you are or whatever, it's a sweep where not a soul or person is supposed to cross, and that because if you do so, then you're to be jailed or or charged or whatever, taken into custody of that. So,
that's right, and that was certainly violated with the individual who got on the elevator at the same time with the president, because no one is supposed to be not even in the same room with the president unless he has been identified and cleared to be in that zone.
Right. And Brother Ron, also this coming Wednesday is Malcolm Latif Shabazz, the grandson of Malcolm X, his birthday.
Yes.
And, of course, they're still trying to get issues on that. Somehow, I can only make an assumption. I have a feeling with what happened with Syria and Iran, but I don't think necessarily Iran, but with Syria, with how the escalation that was done in 2013, possibly would have had a role. But apparently, it's quite clear this was a case of COINTELPRO, because what we saw on the surface about with the bar and all that was an excuse. It was intentional to get down there, and there were some people that target him, including Brother Iman Musa, who let me know that he was targeted as well. And matter of fact, he lost, since at that time when Malcolm was killed, he lost his grandson. His son was attacked on, and then he was attacked on just recently. So, it still goes on, and with us trying to find answers and justice on that.
So, Sabrina, thank you so much for that. And we're going to keep it moving. And Malcolm Sebastian is the grandson of Malcolm X, the great freedom fighter of the 20th century. Yes, he was killed last year. And still there's no official word on what really happened to Brother Malcolm. A lot of rumors and innuendo. But Sister Sabrina Green has been on the case since day one. And I look forward to doing an update with her on my show in the very near future. So look out for that. And we're going to move on to area code 331. You're on the air. Welcome to We All Be. 331. You're on the air. Welcome to We All Be. Turn down your radio or your computer, please. Turn down your radio or your computer, please. Hello? Hello?
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah, I was the person 331. You're on the air. Yeah, they got me feedback. Let me hold over this. We'll go to the next caller. Got Gikes. I believe that's the name. You on the air? You have a question for Mr. Bolden. Okay. Oh boy. All right. Let's go to A.L.L. You on the air?
Hey, is this me?
Yeah. Welcome to We All Be. What's your name?
It's Charles Manson. Anyway, I was listening before, and you niggas are really biased. Like, you're always like, it was a white man who shot JFK. But fuck me.
Okay, we're gonna remove that. We can't have this. This is crazy. It's been you bring out the loonies when it comes to JFK conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But Brother Bo, you want to say something?
I don't think that we've said anything about a white man. I don't know what station he's listening to.
But with us though, one thing white folks, they don't use logic when it comes to black people. Like, we think things from a logical point of view. We're very rational and peaceful people. Like, you talk about black on black crime. I don't believe that it exists. I believe that's a myth, because simple for the fact that even coming to Ferguson, right? People don't understand that Ferguson is not that violent. Now, they have crimes and stuff like anywhere else, but I believe that in 2012 they only had 2 murders. In 2010 they had 0 murders. And when people was rebelling, black folks were mad about the fact how they did Mike Brown. They had him outside in the hot sun for almost 5 hours. They did not respect him or his body, and they knew how he died. And I think black folks, we are justice and peaceful people in our true selves. I ain't talking about how they program us to be in this system, but from our true point of view, we want justice. Just like you, Brother Bolden, you are an honorable guy, and you a justice and peace-loving guy. You just want the truth to come out. You want God's will to be done. And that's the type of people we are. But you live in a system that's very savage and barbaric, and you get people like this saying what they want to say. Because, to me, it is very fascinating that, white folks can feel like they could talk for black people, but the guy who just called into the show can't even walk a half an inch in your shoes. He can't. He can't bear your burden, okay? So I don't bite when people call in with that type of attitude. I'm not big into censorship, but, here you got a guy who has really did a service for your country. I mean, you really served this country, and you have been disrespected by the powers that be. And I'm not going to let you get disrespected by a chump on my platform, so I'm just going to keep it moving.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Brother Bolden. But area code 661, you're on the air. Welcome to We All Be. 661. So, boy, I'm telling you, you bring out the interesting people. There are some fascinating people.
Very fascinating.
Yeah, you're on the air. Welcome to We All Be. Undisclosed number. How you doing? What's your name?
My name is Will. You got a very interesting show. And I didn't know this guy actually existed, but what's the name of his book?
The Echo from Dealey Plaza. The Echo from Dealey Plaza. From Dealey, D-E-A-L-E-Y Plaza.
Yeah, you ought to be on every show that they got, radio and TV, to bring this out, man.
Mm-hmm.
You really ought to be on every show.
They would really be surprised what happened there in the Kennedy assassination and what's going on around our president right now. As a matter of fact, I'm very fearful of his life. I am. And as an agent, I see some things. Go ahead, brother.
I think those were two serious attempts, but nobody's really saying it. I think that guy in the elevator, and like that lady said, there's no way he should have been in the vicinity. And with the other thing, with the bullets going through the, into the building and the guy getting over the fence, listen, those things are very serious and frightening when it comes to the president and the family. It shows just how chaotic that fringe group is. In America, the number one terrorist group that's been allowed to do things since the founding of this country, the clans and all those guys, that is the number one terrorist group, And those people just put on suits, got on the radio, and they're pundits now, and they're all over the place. But they have on suits because if they had put on their usual garb, they would be seen as enemy combatants.
That's right.
So yeah, that's why they put on those suits and got on. They're in the politics. They're in that Tea Party and everything else, and they can't. It just boils their blood to see this brother in the White House. You know what I'm saying? And
yes, it does.
Regardless of how intellectually we try to, analyze the situation, it's a real gut-wrenching, animalistic way they see this thing. I mean, they see it as a personal affront. I'm not saying all white people, but there's a few that they just that fringe that will never see it any other way. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yes,
but the president ought to be. The president ought to be careful, really careful, because this new thing as well, this group ISIS, they seem, the guy who's been chopping people head off, he has an English accent from what they say in the news. And, this is these wars that are going on now, these are wars of mercenaries. We hire them too, like Blackwater and all that.
Yeah.
They're hiring everybody. People are going around, these are soldiers of fortune, going around, taking battles where they find them. Whoever's paying. They don't care. And I'm saying for these guys to be, with military records climbing over the fence, and why has everybody got to be mentally ill? Why is that always the MO of anybody like John Hinckley? What's that guy named who shot Reagan?
Yeah, that's him.
The guy who shot. Everybody's mentally ill. They want to consolidate the conspiracy to one guy. To isolate it. But these things ain't never one guy. It's never one guy.
No, it's not.
Like that guy, yeah, and like you just said, man, this guy, obviously he knew the layout of the building and all kinds of things, man. I think Obama, his wife, they all should take some defensive training. They should start packing, And maybe the kids ought to not be in the White House as much as they were before. They really have to lock down, man, I think, personally. And let me just say, brother, you got a fantastic show. Dick Gregory is always a home run, but this brother right here, this is gold.
Yes, sir. I definitely agree. Thanks for calling in, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for having this show, man. I'm going to tune in every Sunday.
Yes, sir, I appreciate it.
Have a good day, people.
You too,
all
sir.
Right now.
And Brother Bo, this is interesting. You brought up a point about ISIS. I think it was interesting because I remember I saw a CNN look at ISIS about, 2 Sundays ago. And I was laughing to myself because I know that one of the biggest media consultants for CNN is the CIA.
Yes, that's right.
And they control a lot of news organizations. As a matter of fact, a lot of these news organizations,
Even
Go ahead,
going so far as writing the script, I understand.
Exactly. So how can we trust the news, especially if the parent company of these news stations and organizations are military contractors like General Electric and Westinghouse?
Yeah.
And they control the NBCs and the CBSs. So how can we trust anybody when it comes to information about wars and everything else?
Well, you really can't. You really can't. Some of the foreign stations give a less biased view of what's going on over the world. I've noticed this RT, TV, and many of the other stations give a less biased view of the news. And that's what we're looking for, because we have to be careful everywhere and trust in our intellect and our reasoning power.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I just think that also what's fascinating, too, that a lot of these news organizations are controlled by billionaires. Like people like, MSNBC, that's Bill Gates people. You look at the Koch brothers. You look at even the former mayor of New York City. Bloomberg got his own TV network or channel. Mm-hmm. And he's worth billions of dollars. So how can we trust folks who profited off a system that makes it miserable for everybody else to exist?
You know, one thing, the Supreme Court actually took the government out of the people's hands when they ruled that these big corporations could contribute as much as they wanted to the election. Now,
yes.
Now the big corporate, because there's no way that the 99% can outfinance a presidential candidate than the 1% can, who's got the billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so actually the Supreme Court took the voting powers away from the American people.
That's so true. And also I know Obama first ran in 2008, which was a very historic campaign, as we all know. I mean, a lot of deal was made by people donating $5 or $10 online. But his biggest contributor was Goldman Sachs.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well,
like I said, go ahead, Brother Bolden.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that we're entering times now where we're going to have to be very careful. You see these awful diseases that are appearing in the United States now,
mm-hmm.
And this disease that hit Africa over there, it's going to be very, very widespread here in America for a reason. And there's some new virus that's floating around. They haven't even named it yet, but it seems to be attacking our young children. So, and, it's just an awful thing. We're seeing the end of days of some courses, and we're seeing the beginning of a new time in others. So, Go ahead, we're going to come out okay. We're going to come out okay because you have brothers like me, and we have sisters who are studying and who are beginning to bring down that light from within, that light that never ceases, the eternal light, and that's what's going to turn this whole world around. I'm suggesting myself over the internet, we need an international meditation for peace, where the whole world, if we can get them to accomplish this, to at a single moment. See, the mind is the most powerful thing in the universe. The mind mm-hmm. creates everything. All right. If we can get them to concentrate for 15 minutes on peace, then that would be acknowledged by the Supreme Being. If we, from our heart, because I believe that everybody wants the same thing, and mm-hmm. that is comfort and love, generosity. I think that people want to be free. They want to be to contribute something. They want to have security, and if we all can get together, and I'm going to work on this for the next year or so to try to get some day when we all stop what we're doing and just concentrate on the word peace in whatever language that you speak. And I'm sure that the heavens and the etheric, the ethers will sustain our suggestion.
So that's some great wisdom there. And also, I just want to go to the phone lines once again. Get some courage here. Welcome to We All Be. Is this Jimmy?
I'm so fresh, you can suck my nuts. I'm so fresh.
Yeah, they are interesting. Oh, yeah. 'Tis the season, right? We got you on the air, Kawa. You on the air?
Hi.
Can you hear us?
On air?
Yeah, you on the air.
Well, there's something in the White House happening, and Obama is nigger tonguing my anus.
All right, thank you, sir, for your comment.
And what? I didn't hear.
I don't know. He's talking about something like White House and nigger. And I just said, you know what, this is not, because, and that's the thing, too. I think a lot of times that, the way the world is set up is, like, the system is constructed for negativity to gain power. It's like, I remember I was on the expressway one morning, and people were stopping. They was having a traffic jam looking at this traffic accident that happened across the expressway. One dude was so into the traffic accident that happened across the expressway, he ended up creating another traffic accident. He ran into the person in front of him.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people are not really they're too distracted. They're not paying attention to what's going on. Because there's always a bait and switch that go on. There's always a trade-off with white supremacy. Like they give you something and they take away something. Oh, you want to sit next to us on lunch counter, we're going to take away your schools. Or we're going to take away your community. If you want to, live in our neighborhood. There's always a trade-off, and people need to get hip to the game. And I think in this period that, black people are pretty upset with Obama. But we should be mad at ourselves because we've been getting warning signs for the last 50 years that, they're about to do something to us. Like, I look at, for example, Hurricane Katrina. I call it Hurricane FEMA because you had folks that live in one neighborhood, in one city, in one state, in one, country all their lives being called refugees, being treated like illegal immigrants, okay? And these are, quote-unquote, black citizens. Even Fetch Domino, who lived in that neighborhood, was treated, not with the respect that he deserved. So I'm just saying we keep on having all these warning signs come about, and then we get a black president. The gay people getting stuff done because they got money, organization, they got lobby. The white women getting stuff done, money, organization, lobby. The immigrants, the Hispanics, the Asians, everybody's getting stuff done because they are organized, but they use our blueprint from the 60s to do it.
Yeah,
and we forgot the playbook. We don't know the playbook. We don't know the plays anymore.
That's true. That's true.
And we're hurting.
And our old-time leadership's killing us, too.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yes. That's true. I'm going to take one more caller. I think this caller is okay. I don't know. We're about to find out, Brother Bolden. Area code 214, you on the air. Welcome to We All Be.
Hey, bro.
Ron. How you doing? Yeah, this is Ron. What's up?
This is Bear down here in Texas. How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. Thanks for calling. You calling out of Dallas?
No, yeah, what I'm calling about is Brother Bolden that's on there.
Oh, yeah, Brother Bear. I mean, I know his brother Big Bear. How you doing? Go ahead.
There you go. I'm doing good, bro. Glad to hear you on there. I haven't called in and haven't had a chance to. Been doing some other things here, but got a couple of questions. I
go ahead.
The last part of this, and my questions are this. Let me start with this. Mr. Bolden, glad to hear you in here. And I was wondering if you were on the John F. Kennedy team in Dallas at the time.
No, I was not. I left Washington, D.C. on November the 18th. I had just left Washington, D.C., so I was not in Dallas. I was in Chicago at the time, as I explained in my book, The Echo from Dealey Plaza.
Yes, sir. I just saw the advertisement on the Internet that I pulled up. I actually had called, I had told Ron that I'd be listening to his shows, and I have been. And I caught the part of this. I was trying to get to where I could get to a telephone and call. And I pulled it up, and I saw where you had your book on here, and I'm going to try to get a hold of your book this week and get a hold of it. But you were working for the Secret Service at the time that President Kennedy was assassinated.
Absolutely. Sure I was. I was working for the Secret Service.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Could you tell me, do you know if back then, if you heard anything about any shots being fired from the second floor of the Dow Tex building the Dallas, Texas building. They called it short. It was Dal Tex. Was owned by Clint Murchison.
Yes, I heard about it. I heard about it then, back then. The agents who were in a follow-up call, one of the agents said that he was sure that one of the shots came from that plaza, from the Dealey Plaza over there, and one of them came from behind him, and another to his right.
Yes, sir.
So there were very distinctly different shots.
Yes, sir. Was this agent that reported that that you heard, was he in the president's immediate area, or was he in Lyndon Johnson's immediate area? Do you know?
In the first place, the president and vice president were not to be riding in the same motorcade. That was against Secret Service protocol. They should have never been riding in the same motorcade, let alone in the same building later on that day.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the Secret Service agent who was in the car was Johnson. He did his job. He jumped over the seat and he protected President Johnson. But the ones who were to guard President Kennedy did not do their job, and they're paying for it now today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Abram, Mr. Bolden, I apologize. I'm going to get off here in just a second here. I'm and let some other people call in. I would like Ron, if you would please. You know a lot about what I'm doing, not a whole lot, but you know a lot about what I'm doing, and I want you to call me when you get through with your show. Just call me tonight, anytime, or tomorrow if you want to. And I'd like to discuss maybe us talking again with Mr. Bolden on account of the documentary and the movie and the book that I'm doing. My brother's one of the guys that fired the shot out of the Dow Tex building. My brother's actually the first shooter. My father was behind the book depository building in the train yard in a unmarked police car, a black Ford, that had been given to him through the FBI director to Clyde Tolson. And Clyde Tolson, which was the assistant director, actually got that car to my father. And my father was in Memphis, Tennessee. He left Memphis to go to 29 Palms, California, where he picked up my brother, who was in the Marine Corps then. He was in the Marine Corps for 33 years, but not at that time. He just retired later on. And he picked up my brother and two other Marines, and those are the two men that were actually behind the fence, what they call a grassy knoll. Those two men are still alive today. Those two men are still alive today. One lives in Utah, and the other one lives in California. And so, Mr. Bolden, if you will, I'd like to talk to you about, what's happened back then, and see if, I'll fly to come see you, or maybe get you come to Texas, pay your way, or maybe we can meet in California and see what we can do. Ron, I'll get off here now and let y'all get some more calls in. And
yes, that would be great. So, Ron, you be sure and give him all the information where he can contact me.
Yes, sir.
Any information that I've sent to you, just give it to him, and we'll arrange to get together.
All right, Brother Barry. We definitely have you on the show as well.
Well, Mr. Bolden, listen, and I'll be on there too, Ron. I've been promising you I'd be on there about Dr. King, and my brother's the same one that shot Dr. King. My father was just hooked up with with the John F. Kennedy assassination, but it was through Johnson. But what had happened on that was, just to clear something up real quick, Vice President Johnson promised the director of the FBI at the time that he would give him a lifetime job if he would carry this out. Now, I don't know all the particulars behind it. I was 11 years old. But I can tell you this. The night before the assassination in Dallas, I was in Clint Murchison's house along with another kid. He was probably 13 years old. and 2 younger kids, probably 6 and 7, a little boy and a little girl, and we were taken upstairs and fed milk and cookies, and then we went to sleep that night. And we were staying at a motel, and we had been in Dallas a week before the shooting. And in that, when my father carried me into Clint's house that night, there were men in there that I know now from their pictures that were powerful, powerful men back in the day that I've been able to find out now through the work that we're doing. And we've been working on this since 2005. So I'll let y'all get on with it, Ron. I appreciate it, Mr. Bolden. I appreciate what you're doing. God bless you. Keep spreading the word and keep trying to get your truth out. That's what we're fixing to try to do.
Yes. In the meantime, sir, you be very careful about who you talk with concerning this.
I understand.
Yeah, be very careful.
I know there's still rats out there, and I understand that. And but I'm like you. I'm so old, and I've done give my soul to Christ. So
yes.
I used to run rough and hard. I was with the Klan. I was with Dixie. I was with the State Line crew. I was raised and born over in Memphis. And a lot of devilment come out of the South. And, some of the callers calling in, talking about niggers, talking about the Klan, talking about the KKK, this, that, and all that. Just cut them off, Ron. We ain't got time for all that. If we've got somebody in here that can do something, that can bring this and expose this, I wish our president that we have now has not got the power. Trust what I'm saying.
I know.
He would end up dead if he broke out the information about, if he could get it out. He can't get it out. But if he could get out the information, they would kill him before it ever got out of his mouth.
Yeah.
My mother handed over some tapes and some information in March of 92. She was assassinated in June of 92. On the 16th of June, she was assassinated. 3 of my children, she was watching them, babysitting them that night. They were shot all to pieces. They lived. 10 days later, Texas Ranger that had investigated the JFK assassination and other assassinations, and he's also the one that, and his name's Clint Peoples, and everybody knows about Clint Peoples being the top Texas Ranger. And Clint Peoples even got the information that Johnson is the one that had Cotton, the man killed Mac Wallace.
Yeah.
Was the guy that was with my brother, and he was a shooter for Johnson. And so we need to talk about this when we get a chance. And my phone's open 24/7. You just give me a holler. Whatever you do, don't put that number out over the line there, Big Ron.
I ain't gonna do that. I got it. I got you.
Yes.
All right, brother.
All right. He'll give you my number.
That'll be fine. And Mr. Bolden, God bless you. I appreciate you getting out there and standing up and trying to get this out. We're trying to do the same thing. Let's try to hook up and see if we can't do something.
Sure. All right. We will.
Thank you, Brother Bear, for that. Brother. God bless. Hey, we're going to move on. One more caller, brother, but I know I had you on here like, crazy, but this is the last caller. I promise. Area code 336. You on the air? Welcome, we all be.
Yes. Peace.
Thank you, brother. What's your name?
My name is Shakir. Shakir.
Hey, brother Shakir. Welcome to the show.
Yes. Just calling in and thank Mr. Bolden, Mr. Ron, for his service. Like the caller said before, he was talking about several men. I'm a Gulf War vet. I'm a war veteran of the United States Marine Corps. My father has a PhD in nuclear applied physics. My mother was a teacher and educator. I went to Tuskegee University. I know I don't have that much time. That's why I'm trying to put all these things together for you.
Yes, sir.
In a synopsis. The one thing I had to do when I did Special Forces and intelligence work, even when I had a good friend of mine, his father used to work for NSA, and I used to sit in D.C. down in the basement and talk to him for hours and hours and hours, just him giving me information. So when I came off for leave I went back and the information that I was privileged to having, and then going all around the world and doing work and putting boots on the ground and gathering information, and then having a thorough knowledge of myself. All the information I was able to accumulate. One of the things that I found out that is that America, United States America, is not a sovereign nation. It's a corporation. So when you start to look, I'm not going to go too far in that. When you start to look in that people operate in private and public law, there are 2 constitutions, 2 Bill of Rights. I would stagger. Then if you ever Google Great Britain owns the USA. Now, when you study military warfare and military power, you know from having briefings when you were in the agency that you deal with, you have that briefing, you go over protocol, and then you go out and you plow every possible scenario and to deal with that scenario. Now, I'm saying that to lay this out. These people at the top that are elitists, they operate on this private law, and they operate on 2 main systems that they employ. Is one called the Hegelian dialectic principle, and it's a 3-phase approach. It's problem, reaction, solution. These are the people that cause the problem. They get you to react to it. They dry test run, and then they make it so bad that they get you to turn around and you ask them for the solution, and believe me, they have the solution for you, and it's not going to be what you wanted.
That's right.
And the other phase of that, sir, that they use, Mr. Bolden, is they call the shock doctrine. And they can do it on a major scale through TV, through image and personality, or on a medium and a lower scale through newspaper or reading materials. Like you said earlier, if everyone prays for peace, because they know just a few instances ago, if you look, there were some researchers at Yale University that went in through, like my sister has a PhD as a neuroscientist and an MD as a neurologist. So I was telling her, and like I said, me and my father talk about this all the time. So I was telling them the latest technology and information where they went into an individual's mind that they did an MRI on and went out and took pictures out of his brain from the past. That's why I tell people, if you're not studying quantum mechanics, physics, biology, mathematics, I say to people, you are in war, mentally, physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, even right down to the food and drink on your table. So they already know that thought travels at 24 billion miles per second. Thought slowing down produces light. Light travels at 186,000 miles per second. Light slowing down produces sound, which travels at 1,120 feet per second, which is pitch, color, frequency, and vibration. And when that vibration slows down, it produces 2 geometrical shapes in all species on this planet. A 6-pointed star, arm, leg, arm, head in the male genitalia, and arm, leg, arm, head the female. You see it in the goat, the rat, the chicken, and the human being. So they understand how things go from thought to beingness. So as it says in the Holy Bible, such as a man thinketh, he doeth. So if you keep seeing negative images, you got and it produces your negative environment, then that causes downright depression, suicide, and then when you attack the people, you can Google this, how Pepsi-Cola and other companies have been using millions of black aborted fetuses and other dead fetuses, the cells as the fetal matter as flavor enhancers in the drink. And if you know anything about mad cow disease, a cow is a vegetarian by nature. But when you feed a cow other dead cows and other dead animals, then it causes him to have psychological and neurological problems. So the people are, that's what the caller was saying earlier about mental illness. Yeah, the people are crazy because they're making them crazy. Now,
that's right.
And then the last part to tie it all together, if you know anything about the Earth, is 24,896 miles, approximately 25,000 miles of circumference. So when you study physics about the Van Allen belts, this is an energy that circulates throughout the planet. So,
right.
And I quote, 1967 Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Claiborne Pell, quote, now that we have learned to control the weather, we must use hurricanes and tornadoes as earthquakes to force other countries into treaties. Now, somebody said, they can't control the weather. I said, don't you control the weather in your home? I said, when in mathematics, if you can do things on a minor scale, you can do it on a major scale. He said, what do you mean? I said, if it gets hot in your home, don't you turn on air conditioning to make it cool? If it gets too cool in your home, don't you turn on heat? I said, well, you control the weather. Same thing with the food. You want to heat it up, you put it in the oven. You put it in the microwave. You want to cool down, you put it in the freezer, in the refrigerator. Well, the first thing they tell you don't put in the microwave is aluminum, right? Because it reflects the waves that you send at the aluminum, right?
That's right.
So what they've been spraying in the atmosphere is aluminum dioxide. So when they shoot microwaves or radio waves at the atmosphere, they either heat it up or cool it down, which causes them geoengineering, which they manufacture this weather. That's why Drabinsky, who was the foreign policy advisor under President Clinton, he said America's foreign policy is going to be harder to implement because everybody from all over the world lives in America. So that's why the new enemy is the weather. So it goes in like an army, kill people, destroy property. Then you come in, you got to build it up. You create an economy. This is why General Smedley Butler, which I put in the chat room, he talked about war is a racket. How he operated his racket on three continents. How he was nothing more than that's called War is a Racket by General Smedley Butler, and how the so-called elitists gave him $1 million in a suitcase to take over America back in the day. But these people are, in a nutshell, when you look at nature, the only thing they're doing is thinning out the herd. That's all they're doing.
Yeah, bro, I want to thank you on that. I'm going to wrap it up, but I want to thank you, bro, Secure, for the information.
Right. Can you send me an email at abraham.bolden@gmail.com?
You got that, brother Shakira? abraham.bolden@gmail.com. That's right, brother Abraham?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I didn't want to take it. I mean, he's saying some great information. Like General Smedley Butler is the most decorated Marine in U.S. history. He won 2 Congressional Medal of Honor. And the Wall Street backers back in the 30s, when they were trying to overthrow FDR and the government, came to him to overthrow the government to make him president. And he testified before Congress, and he took it to the newspapers, and nobody believed him. Or people didn't really, but it was true. They were going to, try to overthrow it because they were really afraid of FDR. They thought he was going to give the government away to the people, supposedly.
Yeah.
But he really was helping them out in the end because they got Huey Long in office. That would have been a different story. But, Brother Boy, I want to ask you this before I let you go. I want to thank you so much for spending your time with us. I mean, it's amazing. I want to ask you about the Kennedy miniseries that came out a couple of years ago that won some awards. Now, in the Kennedy miniseries, they had you as being part of the White House security detail after JFK was killed. Did anybody consult you from that project?
No, they didn't.
What was their purpose, you believe, for putting you there at that time, you know you was not on the White House detail?
I really don't know. I don't know. Nobody consulted me or asked me anything. Of course, I did protect President Johnson down in St. Louis and here in Chicago, but I was not assigned to the White House detail at that time.
And how did Johnson treat you?
Man, Johnson is a topic for another program, man. You talk about, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it.
Well, I'll bring you back on.
I heard Johnson and the president arguing so loud in the Oval Office, and when I was on the detail, Johnson came out and slammed the door, and you know what he said?
What did he say?
I'll get you, you MF.
Uh-oh. So, okay, there's another topic for another show. Well, Brother Abraham,
that's another topic for another
I'll bring you back on. Yeah, people really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed this as a front teacher of history. I mean, living history. I want to thank you for your service once again, sir. In the words of the great Duke Ellington, we love you madly. You keep on producing and pushing, and we'll see you back on the show very soon.
Yes, all right. Thanks a lot, brother.
Thank you. And that does it, family, for another edition of We All Be Radio. We'll be coming back in a couple of weeks. I'm going to take a little bit of a short hiatus, but I'll be back stronger, better, and blacker than ever. So you just hold on. Check out the archives on YouTube and also on Blog Talk. So in the words of the great Duke Ellington, thank y'all for all being beyond category. And we are out of here.